Welcome to the Further Light Podcast, presented by Wisconsin Freemasonry, helping you accomplish your Masonic goals through education and more light. And now, I present to you, Brother Jeff Woosley.
This is Brother Jeff Woosley, and today I want to explore the virtue of temperance. Of the four cardinal virtues, the virtue of temperance may be skipped over and not given the due consideration it deserves as the first of the four virtues by some brothers. Most American Masons, when hearing the term temperance, think back to their high school history class, where there had been at least a few days spent discussing the failed experiment of prohibition in the first part of the 20th century. The experiment was spearheaded by a group calling themselves the Temperance Movement, who sought to see the evils of alcohol removed entirely from American society. In Masonry, however, as is the case with many tools that we are given, we have what could be considered a more glorious and expansive use and vision than what non-Masons have for the virtue of temperance. In this episode, we will explore what temperance is past the usage Americans are most familiar with from history class. Like any of the symbols in Freemasonry, temperance isn't a one-trick pony. There are multiple layers to this symbol. The Oxford English Dictionary defines temperance as the practice or habit of restraining oneself in provocation, passion, desire, etc., rational self-restraint. This definition provides a much wider look than simply outlawing alcohol. In fact, it's important to note that temperance isn't about removing or denying something completely. It's about not allowing something to take over one's life. The Southern California Research Lodge notes that there's also a connection between temperance and the verb temper. The Oxford English Dictionary defines temper as to bring anything to a proper or suitable condition, state, or quality by mingling with something else to qualify, alloy, or dilute by such mixture or combination. This practice of tempering speaks to the core of Freemasonry and everything we do. This is most likely why it's the first of the four virtues mentioned in Masonry. Temperance as a virtue was pondered by the philosopher Plato. There are two words in Greek which could be translated into English as temperance. One could be translated as self-restraint, while the second could be translated as self-discipline. In Latin, the root of temperance could be used to express restraint from force or anger, but also to express proper balancing or mixing. Plato examined the concept of temperance in his dialogue Charmides. In this dialogue, Plato raises some important points, but doesn't arrive at a very satisfactory definition. The fact that Plato was unable to arrive at a satisfactory definition in his dialogue definitely has this author feeling a little better over the frustrations encountered while preparing for this episode. Aristotle viewed temperance as applying solely to bodily pleasures. He also felt that temperance was something that could not be grasped by reasoning, but only by perception. An interesting take, but not one that would seem to apply to Masonry, which exalts the internal qualifications of a man and not the external. Marcus Aurelius argued that temperance separated humans from animals. In his view, temperance is something that is reached through rational thought. Other philosophers, including Thomas Aquinas, Blaise Pascal, and even author John Milton, seem to largely agree with Marcus Aurelius' thoughts, but often differed on where to draw the line between good and evil desires. The major faiths all share temperance as a virtue. There may be some differences in how exactly the concept is looked at in different belief systems, but it's shared universally across the faiths. The concept or virtue of temperance is thought of as a form of moderation. In Buddhism, it's one of the eightfold paths and is a middle way of moderation between indulging the senses and denial. It's found in the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament and is also found in the New Testament, and in Christianity is very much akin to self-control and is applied to all areas of life. Hinduism looks upon temperance as the concept of self-control and self-restraint. The temperance movement, as it started in the 19th century, framed their arguments against alcohol as though this temperance would be a magic pill. Remove drunkenness and witness this laundry list of societal ills that will be cured. In the end, their premise was proven wrong, because they sought to remove alcohol entirely rather than temper its use in society. In current society, temperance is still looked at through that lens of consumption of alcohol by the average person. It can be used to refer to self-restraint to more than just alcohol consumption, but it isn't really used in that way as often. Even after the lessons learned with America's flirtation with prohibition, it's still used in a way to refer to total abstinence rather than moderation. In a Masonic lodge, temperance is associated with the south of the lodge. This association encourages the surface-level consideration of the virtue. The officer in the south part of a lodge is responsible for the rest and refreshment of the brothers of the lodge. He is also responsible to ensure that no brother engages in intemperate refreshment while not at labor. In practice, a Mason should look to temperance in the vein of self-restraint and self-control. Everything should be taken in moderation, including how we practice our Masonic activities, as well as in how many Masonic activities we choose to engage in. As Masons, we do not discuss religion or politics within our lodges. Those are two topics we can and often do feel very passionate about. We temper those passions while in the lodge so that disharmony has a more difficult time gaining a foothold. This is yet one more example of how Masons can and do practice temperance. There's nothing amiss in a brother feeling passionate about a certain candidate running for office, but we temper that passion by setting it aside for the duration of a dinner or meeting with our brethren. Temperance shares the synonym moderation with the related word temper or tempering. Tempering is usually used in relation to metalwork. The metal in a sword is tempered so that it's flexible enough when used, but strong and rigid enough that it doesn't shatter or break when it's being used. Chocolatiers even temper chocolate when creating their confectionery works of art for the same reasons. In both examples, we see that moderation is being played out. The metal in a sword does need to be strong, but it can be too strong. Temperance is also a clear extension of how we as Masons are directed to divide our day into 3 8-hour periods. There are always committee meetings, degree practices, schools of instruction, and dependent bodies eager for Masons and for our time. It's often hard to remember that one magic word, no. When a respected brother approaches another brother for assistance with one Masonic pursuit or another, it is that moment that many of us lose our practice of temperance and take our time away from family, work, worship, and rest. Everything, including Masonry, needs to be taken with moderation. Through temperance, a Mason is encouraged to seek harmony and balance in our lodges, as well as in our own lives as we work to be the better men we all wish to be. Thank you for joining me, Brother Jeff Woosley, and the entire Further Light team on your quest to find more light through Masonry.
Are you interested in learning more about Freemasonry in Wisconsin? Visit wisconsinmasons.org to learn more about Masonry and access further educational content and more light. Once again, that address is wimasons.org. Any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email us at education@wisconsinmasons.org. And thank you for listening.